in the Winchester's fall finale was it happened. It was a thing that happened on our screens. I just feel like there had been so much hype around episode 7 that I really thought we were going to be getting something that made us want to continue watching come 2023. And I will continue watching. It's just that wasn't how it didn't run how a fall finale would, with exception to the different, I'm gonna say cameos at this point, because Tom appeared as Sam Campbell and I stress appeared. Like,
I have seen Tom Welling on our screen longer when Clark Kent was super speeding through Smallville. That this was all that 5 seconds cameo appearance felt like a little bit of a disappointment to me. I will say that I enjoyed everything that happened in the episode, but now to use an example that you both know what we've just talked about it, the Stargirl series finale had a lot to do, and yet within the first 5 minutes, we were saying how it felt like it was pulling no punches, got right into the story, and then still managed to press pause on the story for a 20-minute fight scene, and then pick the story back up and still leave you feeling completely fulfilled. I don't have a problem with any of what happened in the fall finale of the Winchesters. I feel like the structure of it knocked it way off course, because we spent like the 3/4 of the episode very much stood still, and then everything had happened all of a sudden in the last act of the episode, and it left you with no time to ask questions, to wonder, wait, why did this happen? Again, the episode and its developments were fine, but the structure of it left a lot to be desired for me.
Yeah, the pacing was unbalanced, imbalanced, either one. It was just like not a whole lot happened in the beginning. There was a lot of vague lines and people leaving rooms, and it's like, can we finish our sentences, finish our thoughts, so we're not watching you leave the room for the next scene? Like, I don't know, that when those things happen a lot in an episode, they get distracting, and I think I was distracted by things that were happening outside of the story, like just like little tiny grievances that you might have with the script, or like even the blocking. When I mentioned with you guys, this is probably neither here nor there, people probably don't care about this stuff, but you know, it's on our heart, we're going to get it out. When I keep wanting to say Drake, when John was talking to Henry and Henry just like randomly walked around and switched places, and I was like, that was the strangest blocking decision. He just for no reason turned around. And I know they kind of do that sometimes in shows to keep like the angles fresh and to like move things around. And I was like, oh, they're gonna put Millie in the arch of this. I don't even know where they are anymore. I don't know what this place was, but they did that so he can see her when she walks in. And then they didn't really do that. And that scene, I think that moment, I'm sure it probably meant a lot more for fans of Supernatural to see this character, to see these characters interact, to see what all this means. But just the way that it was executed, I was like, oh, so why did we move him if that wasn't really like a big, like, we're all our breaths being taken away moment? Like, that wasn't really how it played out on screen.
Yeah, so there was a lot of you have to be here and you have to be here and you say this and you leave this room and then we have to have this moment here. Like it didn't think we're like 20 or so minutes in by the time the conversations feel like they mean something towards character development rather than just pushing the plot forward. I personally think I started tapping in when Mary and Carlos had that conversation about the ghouls that killed his parents. And like him getting her to see that this is not her fault. And how he has to, I love how this show does a lot with talking about how healing is complicated. So like he hasn't necessarily gotten to the point that he believes it's not his fault that his parents died. He's gotten to the point that he understands that it's not his fault, even if emotionally he can't quite get there. But like there are events in your life that are out of your control. He wanted a guitar. Like it's the ghouls who killed his parents. Him wanting a guitar and them being in where the place they need to be in to get that guitar, that's not his fault. Mm-hmm. Like, I just really enjoyed how much this show takes the time to have these conversations. I just wish in this fall finale that we had gotten to these conversations a little bit quicker than that we had gotten.
Yeah, I get that. And I feel like the Carlos and Mary conversation was one of my favorite moments of the episode as well, because we haven't had they've had this like such already established dynamic. We never really get to see it on screen anymore. They had that awkward tension in the pilot, and then maybe they had a scene where they got over it in episode 2 or something. Carlos was always paired with someone else. So it was kind of exciting to finally see that scene. And I do feel like that started it somewhat on a high, but then the rest of the episode kind of just stayed in the same place with different dynamics, different conversations. And it only really felt like it started getting going at the scene when John was talking to his father. And I feel like part of that was because Drake delivered such a great performance right before it happened. And that was when you
Always.
finally felt the moment, if you know what I mean. It felt like, okay, now we're getting finale feels. I'm not sure it really followed through on it, but I did appreciate those little moments between when you did start to feel like the stakes were raised a little bit.
And I don't know if I'm fully locked in on the stakes, if I'm being honest. There were some conversations with like, we have to save humanity. And I was like, is it that serious yet? I was so confused. And I know I've said before on the podcast that I'm never going to 100% understand the mythology of the show. And I've accepted that. I'm here for the vibe. I'm here for the characters. I'm going to understand what I can. But when they're having those bigger conversations about the box or like whatever, and I'm like, I don't know. It's just 5 people in a room. It doesn't seem like the stakes are that intense. Maybe it's just me. I'm not criticizing the show. You guys know I love the show, but I was just like it felt like they were more stressed about the stakes as the characters than me as a viewer was just kind of like, or I thought we were just trying to find Tom Welling. I don't understand the fall of humanity. I'm not super locked in on the stakes of the season long arc, I think. Because I've really enjoyed like this more standalone stories in the beginning of the season. And then this one felt like it was trying to full circle with stuff that I was kind of patchy with.
Yeah. I'm with you on that. I feel like Arrowverse examples, CW shows, the first couple of seasons always feel like so much great stakes. The Flash season 1, for example, end of the world. What are we going to do about it? And then when they get like 5 or 6 seasons in, suddenly they're starting to tell us about how it's the end of the world. And you're like, well, I can't see that around you. Unfortunately, I don't feel like the Winchester should be at that stage in its first season yet, because at least the Flash had those previous seasons to hark back to when you felt the stakes. I agree with you. It does feel like suddenly it's gotten very life or death with no evidence to suggest that it is. Maybe if we had got to spend more time with the Accreta themselves, we could have seen that. But they had Bridget Regan show up, deliver some beautiful one-liners, but like she's been very far and few between throughout the season. I feel like they haven't been making the most of her. And that takes us right into this episode when I feel that, again, they did not make the most of her.
No, she just collapsed. And I was like, is that it?
It was so, like, you would have thought, because she's a radio DJ, right, that we would have been having a storyline about mind control, about like turning, like, at least Lawrence, Kansas, I think that's where they are, against the hunters in a way, or like manipulating events to change the course of how things are being run in the town. But instead it was kind of like, yeah, she's Roxy the DJ, but she's not really DJing that much. Like, we saw her playing the songs and whatnot, but unfortunately with Bridget's character, it felt very much like we were going for like aesthetic. It was very like, she is a 70s villain, and that's as far as we got with her, which she is fantastic as a villain. And so the fact that she was wasted in the Winchesters, unless she's coming back, maybe perhaps like she will end up being the queen, not Roxy, but somehow she'll just look exactly like the queen. Queen is
that's what I thought too. I was like, this can't be the end of this actress who is like a big, like, she's a fixture on this network. Like, we've seen her play a villain in so many shows. Like, this can't be the end. I was like, is she going to come back in another form? I don't know. I don't want to believe that it's the end for Bridget Regan, because she was so good, and I don't think we got nearly enough of that character.
Yeah, I have to say that she's a phenomenal villain. I know we've said it before, but she's also phenomenal at making all of her villains different so that they don't feel like the same character, because you could say that on paper that's being typecast as a villain, but no, all these villains are completely different characters. She was the main villain of, I think, of all of season 1 of seasons of Agent Carter, and she was an utter joy and an utter delight, but yet you still wanted Agent Carter to defeat her. On Batwoman, she was only in 3 episodes as Poison Ivy, and yet she was the lead of those 3 episodes. You cared about Poison Ivy. You really wanted her to succeed. So, but because she only had a limited role of 3 episodes, you were like, oh, I want more of her. Where does it go from here? So when I found out she was more of a recurring character on this and she could be more spread out throughout the season, I was like, okay, finally we get to see more of her. And we got to see less of her than we did on Batwoman. And I feel like that was a failure to capitalize on her talents. again, maybe I'm judging wrong, but that last scene of the finale felt very much like a scene out of Alien, where they're looking at something and the queen is actually going to be a giant one of those spider creatures or whatever.
Oh, I hope not.
You know what I mean?
She might be.
That didn't give me the feeling that it should, because I wanted a shadow or something. It literally looked like they were standing looking at nothing, and I was like,
I know. I was like, cut, turn the camera around. I want to know.
Show me. So I don't know if it's like. I will say one thing I thought that was quite good was they very much set this up like Stranger Things, the mind flayer, the hive mind, that they all exist together and that they all have this collective consciousness.
That's a good catch.
Yeah,
I
think that's beautiful. But look at how Stranger Things did it, and then look at how this did. I think the episodic format is letting us down, because we have to get through this story, we have to get through that story, and then they just like weave these little parts in between, and you never fully get the gravity or the stakes that that a show like Stranger Things would have been able to employ with that, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because the people in the, I'm just gonna call it a cave because I'm not even really sure where they are. That took me out, watching them dig and dig and dig. And I know the Accretor were taking over bodies, but I didn't know it was to the extent that we were putting together a labor force to like dig things up for this queen, because the Accretor are trying to find a new world to live on. Like, I feel like the stakes are supposed to be high. The stakes don't feel high. Like the stakes felt high with Sam, right? Because Mary found the bloody bag, and because he was being held captive, even though that didn't really take too long for them to get him out of that situation. But in any case, like, and when he appeared and he saves John and Mary, that felt very big and emotional, and it was great to see Mary back with her father. But it just felt, I was like, we need to dig into more emotional stakes besides John and Mary and the parents.
What did we think about the kiss? Rushed, yes.
Yeah, on paper, I think that is a genius thing to force them together. But in this episode, I feel the execution let it down. I did, again, all down to the performances. Drake, definitely the way he looked at her, like softly, it was like, is this a normal night for you? And then Mary smiled. It was like most days or whatever. I think that scene absolutely was fine, but the build up and the getting there and the leading to it, I feel so bad for this episode airing right or at the same week as Stargirl, because I'm going to keep referring to it. We said Stargirl did so much without doing too much. I actually don't think this episode of the Winchesters had that much to do, and yet it took too much on, I think. We had Tom Welling, we had the Accreta's big showdown, we had the reveal of the Accreta Queen, and then the first kiss, and I just feel
and
like
Henry too.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, because they pressed pause on the first half of the episode, the second half had to work overtime, and I feel like every single one of those select moments were fine, but none of them carried the stakes they should have, because we spent too long stuck in the same place in the first half of the episode.
I almost wish they hadn't kissed, and I thought they weren't going to. I thought it was because they haven't had any like near misses, right? Where they were like about to kiss and then they got interrupted. Like they haven't had any of those like classic will they, won't they almost kisses. And I thought we were going to get that. And I would have been fine with it. I would have been so thrilled to be teased with them about to kiss and then they get interrupted by something. But instead it just was like they were having a weird conversation and then all of a sudden it was just kiss. And I was like, I love these characters so much and I don't feel anything in this moment. Well, I'm glad it happened, but I didn't want it to happen in this episode.
Well, it felt kind of like a last minute decision. Like it was going to be an almost kiss, and then they're like, no, just have them kiss. That way we can like progress forward into the rest of the episodes where they'll be navigating what this means for them. But it just felt, and this might be because there was an extended fight scene, which was amazing, by the way. Like Drake and Meg truly did that. Yeah. Like they were excited about that fight sequence, and they should have been, because it was fantastic, phenomenal. But because there was extended fight scene, then you had Richard Eaton's character Roxy like having her last like moment, and then those two go running. You're like, you got 2 seconds to get Mary and John in an emotional place to kiss, and then Sam comes in through the door. I'm like, can we breathe? like there's just, it is a structure issue. It is because they spent too much time pushing pause on the first half of the episode, that by the time you get to the end, everything has to just be like boom, 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 boom. Except the ending scene got to breathe. I don't really know why that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like they were leaving that as the big cliffhanger. And I was like, guys, we just wanted to see Tom Welling at this point that you give him 5 seconds off, and that would have been a decent cliffhanger. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like this show takes so many cues from Buffy and the early seasons of Smallville. And back in that generation and that era, 40 minutes was not too short for an episode. I find a lot of modern CW shows feel like, or modern network TV shows feel like 40 minutes is too short for an episode. And I just think that's a structure issue because so much happened in that second half, but yet there wasn't enough room for any of it to breathe. So it left you wanting a little bit more, and not in the right kind of way. It made you wish they had a little bit more time to breathe with some of these important developments. And I feel like that's kind of what I felt with the finale, which is pretty funny because the first half of the episode was so slow moving. I just feel like it wasn't balanced right. And like Reed said, the pacing was off. Like we said, the structure's wasn't right. I feel like all the stars could have aligned, but they just didn't for me on this episode.
I think once again, Michael hit us with the mic drop. I want everyone to go rewind and listen to what he just said about the timing of broadcast television. Like that was like the most profound thing and the most precise criticism of modern television that I don't think anybody's written that yet. And I think it's perfect.
I thank you.